Thank you. I wanted to just touch on FE firstly. Your annual report picks up the kind of funding gap post-16, something we've seen through our funding inquiry, and the data pretty clearly shows that FE is the poor relation in terms of funding in education. But it's also, I mean, in constituencies like mine, where something like 11 or 12% of people go to university, it's arguably the most important bit in terms of getting those young people into work. And it's also been the focus of lots of change, apprenticeships, additional SEND requirements, T-levels coming down the track. So I think we all recognise the funding challenge, but as you picked up on it in your report, how much money do you think is enough money for FE?
That's an unanswerable question for me, because our remit doesn't extend to looking at value for money and costs of provision. There are some models of inspection that do bring together the quality and the funding side. The model in operation here doesn't. But I think typically post-16, or sort of what in other countries is termed upper secondary, at the point that you start having to accommodate sort of technical education of various kinds, is typically more highly funded than primary and secondary education, not less well funded.
So what's missing at the minute in terms of the provision in colleges on a local level? If there's a lack of funding, what is it that's missing?
Well, I think there is some, and we've put out a report on our concerns more generally have been particularly at the lower levels of provision, the sort of level two and below. Level 3 broadly is stronger, but we're seeing reduced teaching hours, we're seeing sort of reduced course offerings, reduced amounts of enrichment, and colleges can pay less, so there is more overlap now between colleges and schools. So most of all, perhaps with the increasing expectations on colleges, including sort of post-16 English and maths, colleges can only need the same teachers who are capable of teaching English and maths at that level, but can only pay them substantially less than secondary schools. So they get somebody to a good place as a teacher, and boom, they're off to a secondary school. Colleges are genuinely having a really difficult time.
Do you think it'd be worth it? We had seen announcements last week in terms of what you mentioned, teacher training, recruitment, retention in secondary and through the school system. You think that needs to be extended to colleges as well?
It's an interesting question to which I haven't given any thought since that came out, but potentially yes. Many of the same issues and dynamics apply post-16 as pre-16.
And so another very broad question. Sorry, Ofsted obviously driving good practice and standards in FE, and in my constituency we've seen lots of challenges on a local level in terms of governance and poor decisions within our kind of flagship college. A big focus on national apprenticeship programs rather than local delivery, which to me should be the key priority, is that local provision. So there are obviously non-financial steps that could be taken both locally and nationally. Where do you think the kind of policy gap is for the DFE in terms of obviously, you know, we'd love to throw money at it. It doesn't seem to be a massive priority for the Chancellor, but what can the DFE do in FE to take non-financial steps to improve?
I think the point I've been making about schools, about making sure that first of all we put children's interests first, and that everybody approaches this with integrity. FE colleges play a really crucial role in that we don't have a highly structured and formalised sort of school to labour market matching system in this country, but FE colleges do that to a very large extent, managing the pathways, being imaginative about them, and not rigidly matching, saying only 3 people are allowed to do this, but broadly making sure the flow is right, which is why I express concerns that we are seeing colleges themselves reporting that that the area where their lower level students, the level 2s, those who've gone into a course without 5 good GCSEs broadly, are taking a lot of arts and media courses and unlikely to find employment that builds on those courses in their local areas. And that may be in part a consequence of those courses being relatively easy to attract students onto and relatively low cost to deliver.